Well, welcome to the video where we're going to take apart this Abu Cardinal 554. Okay, so first we're going to remove this. And there aren't really any serviceable parts inside this, so I'm just going to leave that as it is. And it is working anyway, and it's made of plastic, so it's not likely to corrode. Right, now the next piece to come off will be, we need to take the spool pin out, which means getting inside the reel. And then this, which is a left-hand thread, will come off. And first I'm going to take the bail arm off. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to take this out, and I'm going to take that off, and I'll just explain how they fit. And then we're going to take this piece off. There's a little spring inside there we need to look at, and we'll take this off, and there's a spring inside there too. So get a screwdriver that's got the right kind of leverage and the right kind of fit for the screw. Otherwise you can end up chewing up the screw heads, and that means maintenance of your reel in future is really tricky. Unless you go and get a new set of spares or something like that. This particular side has a little spring inside, you can see there, and I'll just show you. I'm not going to do a reassembly video of this one, so it's important when you put this back that the end of the spring, which I'll point to you in a minute, goes inside that little hole there. If it doesn't, you'll find that the bail arm doesn't snap properly, and that will be one of the reasons why this reel was so cheap, because somebody didn't know how to put it back together. So there you go, there I lost my gain. So this is the spring, and it's not particularly coiled or anything like that. It's basically held behind this plate here. That just comes off. Actually, that's got a side, so let's just show you. That's got a side slot on it, so it will just come out. The screw just stays in the hole. You take it right out, and the spring just lifts off like that, and it goes back by inserting into that little hole just there, which is hard to see on the camera, I know, but it is there. Okay, that's that off. Right, so next on this particular reel, we're going to remove the other side. Again, use the right size screwdriver for it, otherwise you'll chew up the screw heads, which is not where you want to be really, if you want to look after your reel properly. This particular reel was very cheap, and we got it on eBay for £3, and the postage was a £5. So the postage cost more than the reel, which is cool. It is a fully working reel too, there's nothing wrong with it. A little bit of wear, but it's not as bad as you might think. And again, that's that little notch there, that fits into the top groove, not the bottom groove, the top groove. Okay, it does actually spin round to the bottom groove, but when you fit it in the top groove. Okay, so this one, right, when you take this off, make sure you got somewhere to catch the pieces. That just comes off, which is fair enough. There is a specially shaped washer, which you must not lose, because it is a special shape, and if you lose it you won't be able to put the reel back together properly. Now you can see here there's a little spring. It's like a hair. It's very fine, because this is effectively very loose, and the other end of it goes down there. So make a note of that for when you're putting the reel back together. There you go, you can see it there. Little hairline spring. The handle. Now this particular handle, this particular reel was cheap, and it has lost the release, so there should be a release here, and that is missing. So we are just going to go into this, just take the screw out. This is not in any way the original part that's supposed to be on this Abu. Well, the handle folds so that you don't break it when you're carrying your reel about. It just slides off like that, and that gives us access to the screws, and then we can take the cap off. This particular reel's lost its deck oils, and it's just going to be a parts reel. So, right, to release the cap on the side of the reel, or the side plate, whatever you want to call it, let's take these screws out. Interestingly enough, this particular reel has a lot of similarities with another video that we made. If you look at the Daiwa 1050 that we made a video of, it has a very similar mechanism to this. Where the handle essentially goes right through from one side to the other, and there's a lock release on the other side. It also has a very similar, as I'll show you in a second, has a very similar mechanism here. Now this particular reel, if you look at it, when you put these caps down, when you reassemble, you have to rotate the drum a little bit to make sure that everything's out of the way, so this goes down properly. If you don't do that, you can find you tightening the plate down onto the mechanism, and then you can screw something up. You can crack the plate, you can twist the plate, distort the plate, and potentially even damage some of this. This piece here this just lifts away, and that reveals the main power cog here. This is your anti-reverse mechanism, which has got to come off first really to release this lot. So that'll be next. Right, so the anti-reverse has a plastic cap which has a wee divot on one side, and it goes into a plastic fork which is attached to this. So you need to just be aware of that when you're putting it back together, and it's a little bit fiddly to get out, but it does come out. And then this is your actual metal ratchet, and that just lifts off in theory. Famous last words. Right, there you go, that just lifts off. So that's your anti-reverse, pretty much, except for the switch, which we'll take off later, which comes off pretty easily. Not sure if the cog will come out at this stage. Yes, it will. As I was describing earlier on, there's a little fork just there, and the anti-reverse, and I'll try and show you this. The anti-reverse, when it sits on top of the metal piece, which is down here, it sits inside that fork, because that's part of the way it works. It doesn't have a spring. Okay. Right, so the next thing we're going to do is to get the drum off, we've got to release the pin. And to release the pin, we need to take this plastic clip off here. So the best way I think to do that is to push it upwards. The first thing to do is to remove this. This is the ticker, which starts to make a noise when the fish pulls the line. So we need to move that first. In a lot of reels you find that this is made of spring steel and it snaps. So you might find yours is snapped if you take one apart. So we undo the screw. Right, so that taking that ticker off allows you to really roll this forwards like so. And if you can roll it forwards, then you can put something underneath it to lever it off, and you should hear it click when it comes off, or you should feel it click when it comes off. It is just plastic, and it's pretty robust, so I won't worry too much about it. So that allows you to release the pin, which, as you can see, just comes out now. This particular part, that is loose, and you need that, so don't lose that. And as you see, it's just made of plastic. It just clips onto the spool pin, and it's a bit trickier than most reels, so you just need to be aware of that. Right, so the next thing to do is to undo this, and this is the left hand thread. Okay, you can use a socket if you want to, but these reels, they're not on particularly tight, and actually they don't need to be really, they just need to be firm. So there is a washer here which comes off when you pull the drum out. Okay, so once you got that off, as you see, the little washer, don't forget to put that back when you reassemble. So that's your drum, which you can now clean and paint if you want to. We also have here, nothing holds this on now. That essentially is just loose, completely loose now. And there's not much wear on that, it's actually not in bad condition. This here, this is your bail trigger. That makes the bail arm go click when it hits the bail mechanism, which we took off earlier. Let me just show you. There you go, we took that off earlier, remember, with a little hairline spring on it. That's what clicks it. So we've now got all that off. That's the one thing I wanted to show you, was there we have a wee washer, and that sits over the bearing. This is actually the bearing. Even that bit with the grindy surface is the bearing. Strangely enough, quite cheaply made, the Abu type reel at this level. Now you notice that washer can't go any further. That prevents, when you tighten this nut down on the drum, that prevents the bearing and this being scrunched to the point at which you can't move it. Okay, now if you look closely, you will see that inside the reel sits there's a washer. Now if you don't put that in, the mechanism which we took off earlier on, which is just here, that doesn't sit properly. Okay, so make sure you got that washer, otherwise it won't work right. It'll be a problem. Okay, the last part of the main mechanism here is the switch, which you can remove quite easily. And basically, leave that plate up. So the plate comes up, and it goes in that way, just so you know when you're putting it back together. And this just pushes out, so there's nothing complicated going on there. And you generally don't need to remove that, but just in case you wanted to know how to. Okay, the last part of the reel is this. This creates the drag which stops the fish getting away too quickly. This piece here is non-essential, but what it does is when you turn this, you can hear it just clicking there. It causes a little ticking noise so that you know you've done something with it. So that's what it does. The way this comes apart, and it's pretty much standard in most of the Abu reels actually, is there's a piece here which you have to lever it up and then catch it so that it comes out. Right, so that's spring loaded. So once that's off, you can then screw this out. Pretty much. You can see it's fairly loose. There's no binding or anything. So it's okay. There you go, it's done. And it's a good idea when you tip these out just to be really careful that you get them all in the right sequence. When you put it back together, you want them exactly right. And if you haven't got the exploded diagram, which you can probably get on the internet, then you might get it wrong, and that wouldn't be too good. So, looking at these, they are pretty symmetric, but I'll just go through it with you. So at one end, there's a fibre washer. This often gets coated in oil, but in order for the friction to work, it needs to be not coated in oil. So there's that, and then there's a cog which a lot of the other ones are sitting on, so we'll do the other end first. You've then got a spring washer which is shaped to sit in the slot, and then you've got a pack washer which is shaped to fit in the slot, and then you've got a friction washer, and then you've got a flatted washer which means that when the cog tries to turn, which has got your spool pin in it, let me just show you. There's your spool pin, it fits in there. When you tighten this down, it pushes up against the friction washers, which are the red ones here. And then on the other side of the friction washer, you've got another pack washer and a rubber buffer, and that comprises the whole set. Okay folks, so that completes the disassembly of the Abu Cardinal 554. I'm not going to do a reassembly on this, but what I am going to do is I'm going to do a reassembly on a slightly bigger reel, this one here, which is the 556. And the 556 only has some very slight differences in the way it's put together. So if you can do that one, then you can do this. Okay, thanks so much for watching folks.